Welcome to the B Block Podcast. I am your host, Brandon Scott. Thank y'all for being here. Make sure that you do all of the things that you do with the podcast. Subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend about the podcast. Helps us grow the thing and helps people know about exactly what we got going on over here. Y'all know what time it is, though. Y'all know what we're here for. The Texans did the thing that we all said they absolutely had to do, man. They could not go up to Foxborough and lose that football game. I understand. We all understood that the Texans had never won in Foxborough before. They had never won at New England in the entirety of their existence. And we'd lived that nightmare. We'd lived that misery over the past 20 plus years or so. Probably none of them more embarrassing either than I would say playoff loss or the Letterman jacket game. I'd say probably the Letterman jacket game is the most memorable and embarrassing one. But we knew that going into this one, it was under much different circumstances, and the Texans absolutely had to win this game going into it 4-1. The Patriots being 1-4. Starting the rookie quarterback Drake May, who was not terrible, by the way. We'll get to that in a little bit, but going into it with the rookie quarterback starting, and not just that, but Ramondre Stevenson, their top running back, not playing in the game. Like there was just no excuse for not winning this game or for losing this game, to probably say it better. And the Texans, of course, did handle business. They won 41-21, and I thought that they really dominated them throughout the game, but the box score, and even if you want to look at the turning point in the game, it would tell you that the dominance did not come until really the second half. And if you want to really look close at it, the fourth quarter. Like, I know they outscored them 13-7 in the third quarter, 14-7 in the fourth quarter, but this did not really feel like a domination. It did not feel like a blowout, really, until you get to the fourth quarter and you get that strip sack from Dameon Hunter. Like in the Chronicle, my colleagues at the Houston Chronicle wrote about this. Greg Rajan specifically wrote about this as the turning point in the game. I agree, especially looking back at it. Like that to me is when it goes from a game to an annihilation of sorts, or more of a dominant, if we want to just stick with the sports phrases, a dominant victory for the Texans, because they go down there and in short order, CJ Stroud finds Stephon Diggs for, I think, like a 10-yard touchdown. And that was really all she wrote after that. Like, once Dameon Hunter gets in there with the strip sack, it's all she wrote. Dominant second half. Texans win 41-21, improved to 5-1. They now have a 2-game lead in the AFC South, which is looking, I would say, increasingly pitiful. I know a lot of y'all had to have been following it, and hopefully not. Hopefully this didn't come across your red zone screen too often, because I don't know why they would even waste people's time with this unless you lived in Indianapolis or in Nashville. But the Titans losing to the Colts, the Titans out there, like all that they put in to that team. Calvin Ridley's after the game, like cussing in the media, or cussing in his media, not at the media, but in his media scrum, cussing about not getting the ball earlier in the game and clearly not being, I would say, aligned with their game plan. The Colts win the game, but it's Joe Flacco out there doing it for him because Anthony Richardson is hurt. And so now there's that question of, is Joe Flacco, are they better off with Joe Flacco out there? And even if so, how good is that? Because we saw the Browns try to do that last year, and it worked up until a point, really until they ran into the Texans in the playoffs. So if you're the Colts and you know you got to go through the Texans, you're 2 games behind them and you're going to play them at their place in a couple of weeks. Anthony Richardson might be back by then. I don't know. But even if he is available to come back, do you want to go back to Anthony Richardson, or is Joe Flacco your guy? And is he your guy moving forward? Does that mean that your number 4 overall pick is not working out the same way that the number 1 overall pick from that year in Carolina is not working out? And really, you're gonna put the season on Joe Flacco's shoulders? That's that's got to be pretty tough for them. But all the more reason why Texans fans should feel good about this, because of course you go out there and you handle business. Everybody feels good about a win. But even the team in the division that won, the other team in the division that won, made you feel good about yourself. And of course, the other 2 lost and are just not very good. The 1-win Jacksonville Jaguars, the 1-win Tennessee Titans. And again, the Titans invested in their team this offseason as if they were supposed to be good. As if they were supposed to be good. They signed Calvin Ridley. They went out there and got Tyler Boyd. They acquired Jarius Sneed. They seem like Tony Pollard. They seem like a team that really believed in itself, even though everybody else around them did not. And it looks like the rest of us are going to be correct about Tennessee as they remain. What are they? 1-4, 1-5. The 1-win Titans and the 1-win Jaguars, who I think are really a surprise to people, because Trevor Lawrence was supposed to be this generational prospect. They go over to their hometown in London, right? The Jacksonville Jaguars home stadium in London, and could not take care of business against the rookie quarterback-led Chicago Bears squad with Caleb Williams, who the Texans did beat in week 2, albeit in Houston and not in London. But everything about Sunday, everything about the NFL weekend had to make Texans fans feel really, really good about themselves, because not only did the Texans do exactly what you needed them to do, but or expected them to do, but the rest of the division looked as pitiful as it has looked really throughout the entire season so far. Now, when I say that the Texans did everything that you expected them to do, let me explain that. Because we went into this game, a lot of us went into this game saying that they needed to win by double digits. I know I was on Sports Radio 610 saying they need to win by minimum 10 points, which obviously is double digits. I could not see them winning the game by, of course, not losing the game at all, but not even winning the game by less than that. But if they did, if there was going to be an issue for the Texans, to me, it was in 2 places. Okay. I felt like New England's defense could be good enough to make the game interesting. Or if, the Texans without Nico Collins, and it wasn't until the end of the week, really, when we were sure that Joe Mixon was going to be a factor. More on that in a second. We knew Dameon Pierce was coming back earlier in the week, but we weren't sure that Joe Mixon would be playing or a factor, or certainly not as good as he was at this game. And my God, was he excellent. But it seemed like no Nico Collins, Patriots defense decent, Texans run game struggling to get established early on in the season. That could muck things up for the Texans on the offensive side of the ball. And then on the defensive side of the ball, the Patriots, the only thing that they do decent, that it seemed like they do decent. Now, mind you, Drake May starting for the first time, but up until this point, the only thing that they had done decently on offense was run the ball. Well, of course, the Texans had some trouble defending the run. And honestly, and I said this all week on the radio as well, I thought that the Bills bailed the Texans out in that previous game by going away from the run too early. Like when they get down 14-3 in the first half, and I think that it felt like they just said, hey, Josh Allen, you got to go save us. You got to bring us back. You got to win us this game. And they abandoned the thing that was actually working for them at that point. Because a frustrating part for Texans fans had to be, in watching the Texans Bills game early was that it seemed like James Cook, like the Bills offensive line and James Cook, it seemed like they were going to have their way with the Texans defense. It felt that way early in the game. And credit to them for withstanding, because mind you, they only give up the 3 points, right? They only give up the 3 points, and they, they came up big in that game. Like they came up big in that game, and I thought they came up big in this game with the turnovers and all of that. But it did seem like the one place where they might be vulnerable was in defending the run. And the Bills said, "Man, the hell with that. We're not going. We'll just bail you out. We're not going to even run the ball. We're just going to have Josh Allen throw it." And maybe we didn't know it at the time, but he's just going to go ahead and have one of his, if not the worst, certainly one of the worst games of his career. And I would say definitely the worst game of his career since he's been like Josh Allen, right? Like they went to the playoffs in 2019, got knocked out by the Texans. We were there for that. We remember that. But he really became Josh Allen in 2020 when Stephon Diggs arrived, that pandemic year. And I don't think he's had a game that bad. And you got to credit that bad since then. And I think you got to credit the Texans defense, Nico Ryans, and really the personnel, the players first, really, for how they made Josh Allen look in that game. But I did think that there was a formula. There was a formula for the Patriots in being competitive against the Texans, I thought. And you could say maybe they didn't stick to this formula, but also personnel dictated that they go with a different formula. I think between Drake May showed himself in this game, to me, showed himself to already be a better quarterback and a better option at quarterback right now than Jacoby Brissett. He was 12 of 19, had the interception, but had 2 touchdowns, a 98.1 passer rating, 11 and a half yards per attempt. Drake May looked just fine. I would start Drake May for the rest of the year if I was the Patriots and not look back. And for now, at least, feel pretty good about my quarterback situation. Probably feel better about that quarterback situation. How about this? I'm rambling a little bit. How about the teams with rookie quarterbacks right now, early on at least, can feel better about their quarterback situations than the teams with sophomore quarterbacks, save for the Texans, right? Or if you want to look at it different, than the other teams in the AFC South, not named the Texans. We can look at it either way. Like, think about it. The Bears with Caleb Williams, the Commanders with Jaden Daniels, and even after just this one game in defeat, the Patriots with Drake May. Okay, if I'm a fan of any of those teams, feel better about my quarterback situation right now than obviously the Panthers do with Bryce Young. He's not even playing. Or the Colts with Anthony Richardson, who stays hurt, but even when he's not hurt, not making me look really good on my Anthony Richardson's going to be good take. Not aging well at all. And I'm going to have to at some point soon apologize to everyone who I either patronized or spoke to unkindly about that, because I don't feel as good about that these days. But it's cool for the Texans, right? But you've got to feel better about those young rookie quarterbacks right now than you do those 2 sophomore quarterbacks that I mentioned, or, of course, even Will Levis, the 2nd round pick, who the Titans picked up. And I put this out there on Twitter, my guy Landry said that this was an old thought. Like I'm not even hip. This is an outdated thought from me. But I asked on Twitter /X or X/Twitter, however you want to look at it, if Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels had already passed up Trevor Lawrence in the NFL quarterback hierarchy. Landry asked me, is that something that I forgot to post a week or 2 ago? I honestly hadn't thought about it until watching Caleb Williams and Trevor Lawrence go up against each other head-to-head in London. And that being the only game on at the time. So I'm fixated on it. Hadn't really thought about it. But point taken, Landry, point taken. But, I mean, think about it. And a lot of the other responses that I got to that were, yes, Yes, Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams right now over Trevor Lawrence, and that's not even factoring the rookie contracts versus the fact that Trevor Lawrence has now been paid. Like even aside from that, whether they're both on all on rookie deals, all on second contracts, one's on a rookie deal, one's on a second contract, it doesn't even matter what you're paying at this point, or even just take that. It doesn't matter, but take that out for a second. Give me those guys. Give me those other guys. And so the Texans, back to the Texans in this game did everything that they needed to do. And I got into that tangent because the style of the game changed, at least for the Patriots, changed based on what their personnel was looking like. Like they didn't have their top running back, and their quarterback change was actually a good one. So turns out, okay, we don't need to run the ball as much because we don't have our top back, and we can throw the ball more because our quarterback change is an upgrade. All right. So the Patriots formula for beating the Texans did not hold true for me, or did not hold true because their whole personnel, the focus of their personnel changed. And I think that worked out in some ways because I was worried about the Texans defending the run. But it also just was I think a non-issue because the Texans did what they needed to do on the offensive side of the ball. Specifically, I would say later in the game, early and late, early and late. Which, if you're going to be good, those are good times to be good, early and late. But the defense, man, like I don't think we can talk enough about the fact that the defense comes out here and forces these turnovers. They get the pick. They get the and the pick, by the way. The pick, by the way. Can we give Eric Murray, who got beat on a play later, not long after that, but he had already made his money that game. That interception from Eric Murray off the deflection, about as impressive of a play as you'll find. And I feel like Eric Murray gets beat up a lot in the media, or not necessarily just in the media, because I think most media people understand Eric Murray's value without having to overstate it or understate it. Like, this is a good football player. There's a reason why he has survived all the different regimes. There's a reason why he's been on the team for as long as he's been on it. And if you don't want to give Bill O'Brien credit for acquiring Eric Murray, that's on you. But that was a good pickup. That was a good signing. Okay. The issue is when they try to have him do cornerback things, but he's a damn good safety. And so shout out to him for showing up in that moment. But the story here for the Texans, okay, the defense, we mentioned Kalen Bullock. Kalen Bullock comes through pretty big with the fumble recovery. Hold on a second here. Something is not right. All right. Yeah, I had a half of stats on Drake May earlier. Y'all forgive me. I was giving y'all either the first half or second half stats. His actual stats were 20 of 33, 3 interceptions, 3 touchdowns. Let me just start this over. 20 of 33 for 243 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 7.5 yards per attempt, 88 passer rating. So scratch that what I said earlier about Drake May's stat line. I was looking at like a half or something, and I knew something was wrong because I'm like, well, wait a minute. Kalen Bullock and Eric Murray had interceptions. Why aren't both interceptions reflected here in said stat line? But either way, he still looked pretty good. Forget the stat line for a second. He still looked pretty good. But the Texans were able to come through and do their thing. So Kalen Bullock and Eric Murray, the safeties who both got interceptions, deserve some obvious and clear recognition. Okay, I mentioned Daniil Hunter earlier with the strip sack, and I believe Mario Edwards was the one to come up with that one, if I'm not mistaken, with the recovery. But either way, that play huge. Will Anderson Jr. and this is key because we talked about this going into the game about like the Texans defensive line is getting pressure. They're among the best in the league at getting pressure. And so it would be nice to see them get home a little bit more. It would be nice to see them actually turn that pressure into sacks. And not just because we're as football fans elementary thinking about it and like, hey man, you got to go get sacks. But the defensive ends themselves will tell you, man, they're about sacks. They want to get sacks. They don't care about pressure rate and they obviously want to be disruptive. I think they do care about that. But when you talk about numbers and production and sort of just the bottom line nature of the business, they want to get sacks. And up until this point, I think Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter had like a sack, maybe a sack and a half apiece. I know one of those they shared. They both at least had a half sack because they shared one. So I want to say they had something like a sack and a half apiece, or certainly no more than two, right? And then Will Anderson goes out here, has 3 sacks. D'Amico Ryan said it was his best game by far. Will Anderson goes out there and has 3 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, and 1 pass defense in the game. And the pass defense led to an interception. So it's not like he just deflected a pass and stat padded. He impacted the game with the pass that he deflected. Now I had to block a couple of people on X, and I shouldn't even mention this, but I had to block a couple of people on X because they didn't understand these stats. And then they were going to try. What I don't like is when somebody doesn't understand something, acknowledges they don't understand something, but then try to make you sound like you're stupid because you said the thing that they don't understand. It's like, nah, man, you're dumb, or you need to learn what I'm talking about. But I'm not dumb because you don't understand basic stats. I was very upset about that. Like, oh man, and one of them was an actual follower. I'm like, oh man, I gotta lose a follower behind this because I can't have you up in my orbit. But anyway, Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson. The point is with that is that we had been waiting on them to show up in a major way for a few weeks now, and they absolutely did that in this game. Your safeties and Kalen Bullock and Eric Murray made plays for you. Your defensive ends in Will Anderson Jr. and Daniil Hunter made game-changing plays for you. Obviously, Mario Edwards has been an enormous game changer for you, I think, throughout really most of the season. The rotation of Tim Settle, Foley Fatakasi, and Khalil Davis and all of the other guys that they rotate between the inside and the outside have also done their jobs. Like I'll speak for myself. I can complain about some moments that the defense has had or some elements of the defense, maybe more specifically the run defense, which again was good in this game. I understand Stevenson didn't play, but overall, this is a damn good defense, I think. And that might surprise some Texans fans to hear me say that, but I think this is a damn good defense. And they showed that in this game. CJ Stroud, I want to point out, was good in this game. He had the interception. But I don't know. Dalton Schultz has been getting beat up a lot on the radio. Specifically, my guy Clint has not appreciated Dalton Schultz. His perception of Dalton Schultz turning down physicality. Okay, he hasn't liked that, specifically in the Bills game. But then in this game, I got upset because, man, he dropped the ball or two or wasn't competitive enough on a couple of plays that I was expecting to see more from Dalton Schultz. I actually think Dalton Schultz is a really good player and definitely, I'll just be transparent, definitely a good resource in the locker room to talk to just about the game. And like he's kind of a pro's pro in that way. But I thought that interception was you could look at it two ways. Either CJ was being a little greedy and should have maybe tried to find something underneath on that play, or that Dalton Schultz wasn't competitive enough in that route. You decide. I'll let you decide, and everybody's opinion. Everybody can have their own opinion on that. But I thought it could have gone either way. But for the most part, you got everything you needed. So let's just break this down offensively real quick and everything that you got from these guys. No Nico Collins, no problem. Tank Dell touchdown, Stephon Diggs touchdown. Tank Dell had 7 catches on 9 targets. Stephon Diggs had 6 catches on 7 targets. Dalton Schultz had 4 catches on 8 targets. So I feel like you do need more from Dalton Schultz in that time. I feel like you need more from him, or more from him and CJ as a combination. Whatever it is, they got to figure that out. Because I would expect more out of the tight end. That was a lot of the feedback I was seeing on Sports Radio 610's media, social media, and even in my own house. Because a certain somebody had Dalton Schultz in fantasy and had money on Dalton Schultz doing a little bit more than his 4 catches for 27 yards. And he had the 8 targets and the opportunity to do more, specifically the one where he could have caught a touchdown and did not, and it was an interception. So there is that. But with Nico Collins out, you get Tank Dell and you get Stephon Diggs, both scoring touchdowns, both stepping up in a way that I think you expect them to step up. But they accuse me of burying the lead here, but I just wanted to get to this last because this to me is the most impressive player from the game. Like, I understand C.J. Stroud played in the game, and Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell and Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter are amazing, and Eric Murray had an amazing play. Eric Murray probably had the most amazing play of the game. Shout out to him again. And Kalen Bullock has been my favorite rookie to talk about since they drafted. And y'all can go back, listen to me either on here or on Sports Radio 610 or any guest appearance podcast that I did. Kalen Bullock was the drafted player by the Texans that I was most excited about coming into this, and he's validating that. But nobody in this game, to me, was more impressive. Did I not acknowledge Dameon Pierce, if I can speak? Did I not acknowledge Dameon Pierce yet? Let me just make sure I did that. Dameon Pierce in his 54-yard run, really excited for him and hoping that this is the first sign of him having that comeback that we all were either anticipating or hoping for with him after a down year in his second season. So he was impressive. But Joe Mixon, bruh. And I had to renege on this tweet about the Texans not being able to run the ball even with Joe Mixon out there, because it certainly seemed like that early in the game. And as literally as I'm recording this, Seth Payne, 10-year NFL veteran and our morning show co-host, Seth Payne, is just showing some film breakdown of Joe Mixon just being a different type of running back than anybody else that they've got on this roster. And it's absolutely true. Showing that touchdown run that he had. But there's some pretty decent blocking on this play as well. Should probably point out. But Joe Mixon, man, early on it looked like, okay, this is going to be a struggle. Yeah. The first quarter, Joe Mixon, I shit you not, had 9 carries for 16 yards. And so by then, I'm feeling like, man, this running game, this is just even with Joe Mixon out there, man, it just is not good. It's just not good. By the end of it, Joe Mixon had 13 carries for 102 yards. Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that? His last 4 carries. See if I can do this quick math. It's not very quick, is it? 92, 96, 86. Right. So 86. So his last 4 carries went for 86 yards. His first 9 went for 16. His last 4 went for 86. And of course, he does have the 59-yarder, the 59-yard run, that big run that he had. Joe Mixon. And that's the thing, too. Even when the run game is not looking great, even when the offensive line is not necessarily ideal, man, they don't even have to be necessarily ideal. They just need to be adequate enough, good enough to make it happen. And sure enough, they had a couple of plays where Joe Mixon was able to break a couple. He was able to break a couple. And it didn't matter really. I'm not gonna say it didn't matter at all, but it didn't feel like it mattered as much. Because in the second quarter, Joe Mixon's got the one run for 20 yards. Right? The third quarter, or was it no? Yeah, and then it's the fourth quarter where he's got another run for 20 yards. It's just different. It just looks different with him out there. Yeah, no. Second quarter, I'm thinking about, second quarter is when he's got the one run for 59. That's when the 59-yarder comes. But either way, the point is the running game looked a lot better and a lot different with Joe Mixon out there and even with Dameon Pierce out there. And hopefully for the Texans, it is a sign of much better things to come. After that Colts game in week 1, everybody was talking about how the Texans look like, man, if they're going to have a balanced attack, CJ Stroud's going to be himself. CJ Stroud's going to play like this. The weapons are going to be like this, but they're also able to run the ball, dominate the line of scrimmage, and even if they're not dominating the line of scrimmage, they got a dude that can just run motherfuckers over, run through you, pass you, around you, whatever. That's Joe Mixon. That's Joe Mixon. So, I didn't know or realize that he'd be that healthy, that effective. Maybe I should have, but man, I think I honestly think that Joe Mixon is the difference between this being a good team, a playoff team like it was last year, and a Super Bowl contender. Because that's somebody that you can hand the ball to in the cold. Now you're hoping that your offensive line does its job, but that's somebody that you can hand the ball off to in the cold and really rely on. I'm gonna give you these few stats before I get out of here. These are also available at Brandon K. Scott on X. And these are from the Texans. The Texans pointed these out after the game, some of their post-game notes. Will Anderson Jr., the only player in the NFL this season to record at least 5 tackles, 3 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, and 1 pass defense in the game. Impressive. He's also got more sacks, career sacks so far than any other player in this draft class. But of course, he's a defensive rookie of the year, the reigning defensive rookie of the year, who also just had 3 sacks in a game. So that should not surprise you at all. Kalen Bullock had an interception and a fumble recovery in this game. Only 19 safeties, rookie safeties in the NFL have ever done that. So a long history in the game, less than 20 safeties, rookie safeties, have had an interception and a fumble recovery in a game. And Kalen Bullock is now one of those. And it's not like he just out of nowhere made these. He has been around the ball or a a something like a playmaker for the entire season. All right, even when he's giving up, and that's the life of a defensive back. You're going to give up some plays, but he has been more of a net positive than a net negative, and I don't think there's any debate about that. Finally, Joe Mixon. He became just the 12th running back in NFL history with 100 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, and 1 receiving touchdown, which he had in this game, in 4 or more career games. Let me repeat that for you. 100 rushing yards, a rushing touchdown, and a receiving touchdown, all in the same game, 4 or more times in his career. Only 12 running backs have ever done that. To me, what those numbers say is that he is one of the more durable and productive running backs of his time. So that's what the Texans are working with in ideal circumstances. A team that's a little dinged up, trying to find its identity, rookie quarterback, and then the established, dare I say, juggernaut who has lost its top pass catcher, its biggest pass catching weapon, but regained its top running back, and honestly changes the dynamic of the team. Like, I don't think that the team has anybody else like Nico Collins on it, but it does have other wide receivers who could be your top wide receiver on any given Sunday. Whereas with the running back situation, maybe Dameon Pierce could be your top running back on any given day. He hasn't been playing though, right? Him and Joe Mixon come back on the same game or in the same game. But they don't have anything close to the type of game breaker I think that Joe Mixon is. And then when you insert Dameon Pierce as the second back, if that's going to be your number 2 back or somebody that you can rotate in and out of there, completely changes the dynamic of your team. So that's that. That's all I got on the Texans recap. They win 41-21, improved to 5-1. Texans are rolling. Got Green Bay coming in, or I'm sorry, they're going to Green Bay next week. And we'll see how that shakes out. That should be an exciting matchup between 2 young but now also established quarterbacks in CJ Stroud and Jordan Love. But I think it's going to go far beyond that because these are also 2 really good football teams that are put together really well. Later on in the week, you'll be hearing from John Hickman from the Locked On Texans podcast. We will get on here and chop it up about some Texans. He's also a Patriots fan. So they were trying to live that dynamic or that dichotomy of being a Patriots fan while they're terrible, but the team that you cover and that represents the city that you're from, which is the case with John, out there balling. So we'll talk about all of that later on in the week. We'll probably have some extra stuff in there for you too, because John and I like to go off the beaten path a little bit in these conversations. But until then, make sure that you are subscribed to the B Block Podcast, wherever it is that you get your podcast. You can check us out on YouTube as well. Make sure that you are rating, reviewing, telling a friend. And until next time, y'all be good.